Hello, everyone, and welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is the CFL DFS video for week number 8. So in this video, I'll be going over my sheet for the week. We'll go over to DraftKings, talk a little bit about whether or not I'd be overweight to the field, underweight to the field, at least in terms of what I expect for ownership, since there's not much data out there for ownership at this point in time. If you're interested in some more in-depth stuff, if you're interested in this sheet as it does get updated throughout the week, be sure to sign up for the Patreon at patreon.com/Coach Craig Sports. Also have all the stats from the season there, as well as the averages in terms of target share per game, in terms of receptions per game, in terms of receiving yards per game, receptions, targets, everything good there in terms of carries, rushing yards, touchdowns, everything like that. So definitely be sure to check that out. But we're going to start off with the week number 8 in general. So the first game we do get is going to be on Friday night as opposed to Thursday. So we should have a little bit more information as we get closer to game time on Friday. Obviously, like I said, this sheet will be updated as we get more injury news, obviously. But we're going to start off with the Ottawa Red Blacks. So Dustin Crumb's $9,900. He's shown incredibly good rushing upside so far this season. So I do consider him a GPP option, maybe a potential cash game play if you want to go there. Obviously, the passing touchdowns haven't been there too much until last week. So there is opportunities for him to pay off at that $9,900 price tag. But, you know, it's still getting up there in relative terms to some of these other quarterbacks. Then at running back, kind of a mess here. So Devontae Williams did come back. Demontre Tuggle looked like he was going to be active last week, then ultimately wasn't. And then it was Ante Militer. I'm probably mispronouncing his name. That ended up scoring 2 touchdowns. Jackson Bennett did miss last week with a head injury, which I am assuming is a concussion. He did practice in full on Wednesday. He's listed as questionable. So I do assume that he's back this week, probably taking on those kick return duties once again. So not any big interest in the running back position this week. Obviously not interested in many fullbacks just in general. Nate Bahari at wide receiver at $4,300 looks like a viable cash game option. He's had 2 incredibly strong weeks back to back now, showing some pretty good chemistry with Dustin Crum. Dustin Hardy at $7,500 could be a GPP option. Scored his first CFL touchdown last week. Ackland at $7,700. Really not getting to, really hasn't shown the upside in regards to that price tag. Looks like CJ Lewis will be out again this week at $2,500. Keontae Bruglen really hasn't done anything, and the Mariners just kind of been an extra wide receiver that hasn't really done too much as well. So that's kind of where we're at for Ottawa. Their defense you could probably roll out as a GPP option. Looks like Bo Levi Mitchell should be back for the Tiger Cats, so that might boost their offense just a little bit, but there's still some rust that he could kick off potentially there. And then at the same time, you know, we're talking about a defense that's been all right so far this year, and then a Tiger Cats team that's had some struggles here and there. For the Tiger Cats, Bo Levi Mitchell is returning from injury. It looks like he'll be the starter this week. I'll have to dig in a little bit more, see if I can find an official confirmation on that at this point in time. But we'll leave a comment down below as we get closer to game time to confirm that he will be the starter. But it's safe to assume that he is, given the fact that all the money they're giving him at this point in time, the fact that he's been healthy in practice at least in full for 1 day and then limited 2 days before that. I mean, they could go to Taylor Powell for another week, but I think they're going to go back to Bo Levi Mitchell this week. So at $6,500, he could be a viable pay down option just in general. Obviously, some rust that could potentially be kicked off there. In terms of their running backs, we got James Butler at $9,600. Not the greatest week last week, but still a pretty strong GPP option, maybe even a cash game option if you want to go there. Tariq McAllister behind him, you know, just a contrarian option if you want to go that direction. Last week, we didn't see too much out of Tim White, so maybe more of a contrarian play. Don't really feel like paying up to $10,100 for him. Duke Williams, $7,200. Put that big goose egg up for us 2 weeks ago, but pretty strong week and a bounce back last week. Consider him a GPP option once again this week. Not really interested in Keandre Smith. Tyler Ternesky is on IR at this point in time. Terry Goodwin had a pretty strong week last week. Seems like he's getting a little bit more involved. So at $4,800 could be a GPP option, maybe even a cash game option if you really want to go that direction. And then that Tiger Cats defense, you know, going against Ottawa, there are some advantages to be had there. Dustin Crum has shown a willingness to turn the ball over, at least early on. So, you know, a cheaper defense there could be a potential pay down option on that defense. Then we move down to the Toronto Argonauts. Chad Kelly is $10,900. He is the most expensive quarterback that will actually be starting this week. So has some pretty strong GPP upside. If you really want to roll him out in a cash game, you could do that as well. Then moving down to their running back situation, AJ Alouette at $9,300 could be a GPP option as well. It's been a pretty strong running back so far, not always getting the touchdowns, but getting some pretty good yardage on a week-to-week basis. Then we got Curly Gittens Jr. at wide receiver. If you want to roll them on, GPPs could make some sense. You can take some shot on any of these guys with Toronto. Seems to be a different guy every single week. So I will note that DeMonte Coxie was limited on Tuesday, did not ultimately end up practicing on Wednesday due to an ankle injury. So we'll monitor his status pretty closely as the week does move along. The Toronto Argonauts defense, you can probably roll them out as GPP option, maybe even roll them out as cash game since they're a pretty strong defense. They are going against the Rough Riders with Mason Fine at quarterback once again. I am a pretty big fan of I was a decent fan of Mason Fine, I should say. So I don't think it's like where you have to play Toronto's defense, but they're still a strong defense going against a backup quarterback at this point in time. Then we get down to the Rough Riders. We have Mason Fine there at $9,000. More of a contrarian option than anything. Really didn't see him run last week, even though he did break off the one long run the week prior. 2 interceptions there, but did throw the ball around pretty well, although he didn't get into any touchdowns. So that is something to watch out for. In terms of the running game, Jamal Morrow's still there. He's kind of a GPP option at $9,100. Maybe they rely on their running game a little bit more. Didn't really seem to be the case last week, though. And then we get down to the wide receivers. So we have Sean Payton Jr.'s potential GPP option at $6,600. Tevin Jones, same way at $8,200. And then you kind of get the rest of the guys here. So Jake Quinicki was on the IR. It says he practiced in full Tuesday and Wednesday, so we'll see if he's back or not. Mario Alford, mainly just the kick returner. Mitchell Pinting did not practice Tuesday or Wednesday due to head injury, assuming that's a concussion, so he's probably going to be out this week. Kendall Watson at $2,600, maybe a GPP paydown option if you want to go there, contrarian option. And then they got Brendan Linus, I believe is how you pronounce it, at $2,500. He is returning from injury, so we'll see what kind of a role he plays this week. But mainly, if I'm looking at this passing game, I'm going to go after Bain. I'm going to go after Jones. If you want to take a shot on Kendall Watson here and there, probably could make a little bit of sense. Then we move down to the Edmonton Elks. Really not interested in their quarterback situation once again, assuming Taylor Cornelius still gets the start and probably plays most of the game. But, he really doesn't look that great so far. He's $8,800, so still not even like a great value at that. Kevin Brown, probably more of a contrarian option at $7,800 if you want to go that direction, but not too interested in Tanner Green, Eugene Lewis, both on IR still at this point in time. We did see Dylan Mitchell have the long touchdown last week at $5,600, but still not a guy that I'm getting too often. Stephen Dunbar Jr., not the greatest week for him last week, but $6,200. If you want to roll him on GPPs, you could. Kyron Moore at $3,800 seems like a pretty safe or solid GPP option. They did ultimately end up cutting Maurice French this week. So that was kind of an interesting move as one of their more talented wide receivers. So we'll see how the situation all plays out. I think it's Emmanuel Arta who was on the IR. He's been limited in practice this week, so he should be returning sooner rather than later. And then their defense, could consider them a GPP option. They're going against the BC Lions, who the Lions have a good team, but they're going to be starting backup quarterback Dane Evans this week. So Edmonton Elks, don't think they're the greatest defensive team in the world, but if you're looking for a paydown option on defense, could be the option for you this week. For that BC team, we got Vernon Adams Jr., $11,000. He has been limited in practice all week due to a knee injury. Sounds like he'll be the third quarterback this week. Dane Evans will be getting the start, and they already said Dominic Davis will be the number 2 this week. So if you really want to roll out Dane Evans, go right ahead. Not going to be something that I'm doing myself personally this week. Not even cheap enough to, even be a cost-saving measure. Taquan, I still got to fix that. So this is Taquan Mazel. He was a healthy scratch, at least in practice so far. We saw Sean Shivers get all the reps last week, essentially, even with LaFrance active. So if you want to go after Sean Shivers at $6,500, could make a little bit of sense. Obviously, we'll monitor the status of Mazel a little bit more. In terms of the wide receivers, kind of the big thing here this week is Dominic Grimes did not practice Tuesday or Wednesday due to an knee injury. So there could be some opportunities open up for this BC Lions team. This is kind of like Toronto, a lot of talented wide receivers here, though. Not really sure who's going to pay off on a week-to-week basis. But more weeks than not, Keon Hatcher has been pretty solid and reliable. So he probably be the one that I target the most. But, behind him, we got Lucky Whitehead and Alexander Hollins, who could both feeling very nicely for Dominic Grimes. And then you got Katoy and McInnes that both had kind of decent weeks from time to time. That BC Lions defense, if you want to roll them out as a cash game play, that does make some sense. They have a really strong defense. And they're going against Edmonton, who struggled quite a bit so far this season. Then we're going to keep moving down. So we have the Montreal Alouettes. So Cody Fajardo is up to $10,100 at this point in time. So GPP option does have some decent upside as we've seen throughout the season. Not really too interested in the running back room, whether it's William Stanback, Jashwan Arntry, or Walter Fletcher there. So going to really pass on them for the most part. James Tuck, one of their fullbacks, was limited on Tuesday, didn't practice on Wednesday due to an ankle injury. So we'll just note him. He's kind of been the one that's been the most involved so far for them this season, at least. And then, Austin Mack, up to $9,900 at this point in time. GPP option, not a cash game option like he's been a lot of weeks. Julian Grant behind him, if you want to roll him out as a contrarian option, could make some sense. And then, you kind of just get down to some of these cheaper, to the two newer receivers, and Courtney Davis is kind of a pay down option at $2,900. And then Tyler Snead, who did have that 3 touchdown game before their bye week at $5,500, could make some sense as a GPP option as well. At Alouettes defense, consider them a GPP option at this point in time. Calgary's kind of been one of those hit or miss teams so far this season. Some weeks they look really good, some weeks they don't. Montreal's been a decent defense for the most part, outside of a few games for some of the stronger teams. For the Calgary side, Jake Maier, if you want to roll him on GPP, shown a little bit of life as of late, so could do that. Obviously, if you're playing the Alouettes defense, probably not going to play Jake Maier, but if you're playing Jake Maier, you're probably not playing the Alouettes defense. So that kind of goes back and forth there. Although, that one week when BC and Toronto played each other, the winning lineup actually had Vernon Adams Jr. at quarterback and Toronto's defense as their defense, which you're not going to see too often, but there is times and a place for it. At running back, Kadeem Carey was limited on Wednesday due to his toe injury, so he could be back potentially this week, probably looking more like next week. Obviously, if he doesn't play, Dedrick Mills looks pretty good. If he plays, then obviously we're looking at probably at least a split backfield at that case. Then we're going to keep moving down. Not really too interested in any of those other running back options at this point in time, but Stampeders, in terms of these wide receivers, Reggie Begelton's looked pretty good the last couple of weeks, $8,700 GPP option there. Trey Odom's Duke's been pretty solid throughout the season, so he's another GPP option. Luther Haka, I can't even pronounce his last name once again, was full on Wednesday due to an ankle injury. He's coming off a pretty big game, although he did miss last week. We'll see what type of role he plays. Clark Barnes scored his first career touchdown last week, so $3,700. Calgary's another tough team to nail down from wide receiver perspective. But, we got the top end guys with Begelton. We got Mark and Michelle. We got Trey Dukes Odom. And then, we got all these other guys that kind of play a little bit of a role. So Michelle would be the other one I consider GPP option. Tommy Lee Lewis, he's doing some punt return duty at least, so he could get some points that way if he does anything on offense. Hasn't done too much the first couple weeks, although he did score a touchdown in his first week. So there is options and opportunities there if you're looking to punt down with him. And then Tyson Middlemost did return from IR last week, but really we just played special teams from the looks of it. And then that Stampeders defense, not really too interested in them against Montreal this week. So that's kind of where I'm at in terms of the sheet for week number 8. We'll go over DraftKings real quick and talk about whether or not I'll be underweight or overweight to the field. Some stacks that I'm potentially looking at just in general. So let me pull up a contest here because DraftKings was taking quite a long time for me to load earlier for me. So I do apologize for that. We're going to go to 4 games, make sure we're in a 4-game one before I get all the way into it. And we'll just kind of talk through the slate just in general, kind of where my general thoughts are and where I'll be looking to be overweight and underweight to the field in general. So I do apologize that this is taking quite a bit of time. So just in general, obviously, like I said, Vernon Adams Jr. is out this week. Chad Kelly probably be in line with the field this week, maybe a little bit overweight. Cody Fajardo probably in line with the field. Crumb's probably going to be in line with the field. Maybe I make a stand there. Jake Maier probably a little bit underweight to the field. Taylor Powell, obviously, situation with him and Bo Levi Mitchell is going to play out a big role for this week overall, because if Bo Levi Mitchell is only $6,500, safe to assume that he's going to get a decent amount of ownership since he is one of those bigger familiar names as well. So that's kind of quarterback in a nutshell for me this week. Probably getting to a decent amount of Chad Kelly, probably getting a decent amount of Dustin Crum, a little bit of Cody Fajardo, a little bit of Jake Maier, maybe a little bit of Mason Fine here and there. And then Bo Levi Mitchell, if he ends up being the starter, we'll have a decent share of him just because I don't want to miss out. Running back, probably in line with the field on James Butler this week. Was a little bit overweight to him last week, which was kind of a surprise to me personally. AJ Alouette probably be in line with the field once again. Morrow maybe a little bit overweight to the field. Dedrick Mills, I like him quite a bit. I loved his game coming out of college, but if Carey's back this week, going to hurt him quite a bit. If Carey doesn't play, then I'll have a decent amount of Dedrick Mills, but if not, then probably not getting to him at all this week. Really, running back for me is going to be the top three guys for the most part. And then maybe I'll get to Devonta Williams a little bit, but I don't know at this point in time. Not really too much else here. Really just depends on the health of some of these running backs at this point in time. So I am recording this video on Thursday afternoon. Obviously, a lot more information is going to be coming out as we get closer to lock. Then we move over to the wide receivers. So Dominic Grimes, probably not playing this week. Not going to play him either way. Tim White, not going to play at all. Austin Mack, I'll be overweight to the field on. Giddens Jr., probably in line with the field. I think there's some opportunities to be had with him, though. Hatcher, I'll probably ultimately be overweight to the field. Lucky Whitehead, probably in line with the field. Julian Grant, probably underweight to the field. Bagleton, I'll be overweight to the field on. Jones, I'll be overweight to the field on once again. Ackland won't have any shares of. Justin Hardy, probably in line with the field. Hollins, probably in line with the field. Daniels really not getting too much this week. Obviously, he's had a couple of decent games here and there, but nothing that is too exciting for me. Obviously, with Toronto, it's just which wide receiver is going to pay off on any given week. I think if Jamonte Coxie misses, maybe we see a big Cam Phillips week 2 as well. Not really getting to Coxie, not really getting to Mitchell. Tyler Snead, I'll probably be in line with the field, maybe a little bit underweight just because a lot of people might be point chasing after that 3-touchdown game. Let me look at Winky here too. Did he come off? So he logged full practice again. I was trying to see if he came off the IR, but he doesn't have it next to his name, so he could be back this week. Could be an interesting option there, maybe a contrarian option this week overall. David Unger, the third, probably get a little bit of him. Katoy, maybe a few shares here and there. Nate Bahar, I'll be overweight to the field on. I know that much. Mark and Michelle, probably a little bit overweight to the field on. Kyron Moore, probably in line with the field, maybe slightly overweight. Not really too much else here. Courtney Davis, I'll have a couple shares here and there. Kendall Watson, maybe a share here or there, but that's probably about it at this point in time. Shaq Evans could be back this week. We'll keep an eye out on that one as well. Nothing too crazy here at this point in time, but I think it's a pretty simple slate for the most part. Obviously, a good slate to mix and match once again. Getting over to defense, though, probably have a decent amount of lines. Probably a lot of the field will have that same. Argonauts probably overweight to the field. Ottawa Red Blacks probably in line with the field. Calgary getting underweight to the field. Montreal maybe slightly overweight to the field. Rough Riders not really getting to this week. Tiger Cats maybe here and there, and the Elks maybe here and there. So that's kind of where I'm at just in general. Hopefully you guys all found this pretty informative. I do appreciate each and every one of you checking out. First of all, if you have any specific questions for CFL DFS, be sure to leave them down in the comments below. Like I said before, patreon.com/Coach Craig Sports for the updated sheet as the week moves along. And then the stats sheet for the season as well. And then, like I said, if you guys have any questions whatsoever, feel free to reach out, whether it's in the YouTube comments or on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport. But with that being said, if you're joining me for the very first time, first of all, definitely do appreciate you checking it out. Second of all, would ask that you do subscribe if you find the information that I'm put out pretty useful and helping you with your DFS process. Would mean a lot to me, helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now, it's MLB DFS Monday through Friday. We got CFL DFS once a week too as well. So definitely be sure to look out for both of those. Turn on your notifications so you never miss a beat. And then with that being said, that's really all that I do have at this point in time for this video, for this live stream for CFL DFS for week number 8. Definitely do appreciate each and every one of you tuning in, whether you're watching live or on replay. It means a lot to me. Definitely do appreciate it once again. Hopefully each and every one of you have a great rest of your day, no matter which day you're watching this, and a pretty good week in CFL DFS for week number 8.